There. If you've clicked on this video out of the blue, just a heads up that this video is intended to be a supplementary video to the lesson on traits of quadratic functions. So I strongly encourage you to check out that lesson so you can see some of the vocabulary and the context for what we're about to do in this lesson. Now, one of the things I love about Desmos is that it allows us to very quickly check answers and kind of play around with graphs and their functions and what they look like. And one of the things we can do with that is to practice writing our increasing and decreasing intervals with inequality notation. And Desmos kind of checks our work as we go through that. So we're going to start with this function here. I'm going to write y equals x squared plus 4x plus 1. And we are going to use Desmos to indicate the increasing and decreasing intervals for this quadratic. Now, as I come over here, if I place my cursor on there and I kind of trace it from left to right. So when we're talking about increasing and decreasing, we have this sense of maybe movement along the graph. And so what we're doing is we're moving from left to right. So in other words, as x increases, so if you look at the x coordinate there, I've got it hovering over negative 4.045. The x coordinate is increasing. Now it's negative 3.48. It's a little bit easier to see it if I move over here. And we get x is 0.216, and now it's 0.524. And so you can see that x is increasing. Now, as x increases, we're looking at what does the y coordinate do. So it's as we're moving along the function from left to right. That from left to right is our x is increasing. And if I trace here, what I want you to notice is that the y value is decreasing. So right now the y value is 5.1796. Now the y value is 3.3202 and so forth. And it's the y value is decreasing and the y value continues to decrease. And it decreases all the way until we get to the vertex. And what we see there is what's called a minimum value of -3. So that means the smallest value that your y coordinate has here is a -3. And that happens when x is equal to -2. And so when we go to think about where is it decreasing, we always use those x coordinates. And the reason we do that is because the y coordinates duplicate. So if I click on these 2 points here, notice that we have y equals 0 and y equals 0 again. That makes it confusing to use the y coordinates for something because the y coordinates can replicate each other, but the x coordinates never replicate. That's part of what it is to be a function, is you don't duplicate those x coordinates. So when we go to reference our intervals, we always reference them with respect to that x coordinate. Now, over here on the left, I know that the x coordinate of the vertex is -2, and everything to the left of the -2, so coming out here, is where the function is decreasing. And so I'm going to type in x is less than -2. And what that does is it shades in the decreasing chunk of the graph. So every part of the graph that's in this gray region here is decreasing. And if you don't like the color, or if you want to specify, say, a specific color, you want to highlight the box. So you want to be a little bit careful about that. It should be a highlighted box. Click on this little gear, and then you can click on the black circle there and you can change the highlighting. So let's say decreasing, you've been asked to highlight it in green. You can go ahead and change the color of that so that you're highlighting it in the required color. And you can see very clearly where that line stops. Now, I can also highlight the increasing interval in a particular color. So this is increasing because the y value is increasing. So the y value here is -2.5644, and now it's -0.75. So it's going up. The y value is increasing, and that would be x is greater than -2, and it highlighted that in red. So what you can see that we've done here is we've broken our quadratic into increasing and decreasing, where everything in the green section is where it is decreasing and everything in the red section is where it is increasing. And you can do that as a way of checking your work. And what you've got over here on the left is your interval written in inequality notation. Now you might need to change that over to interval notation, and that's kind of a topic for another lesson. But if you've got your function in front of you and you've highlighted, say with a highlighter on your page, which part of the function is decreasing and which part is increasing, you can use Desmos and this highlighting to check your work. Is the piece of it highlighted that you wanted to have highlighted? Now we'll take a look at another one. We're going to do positive and negative. And for that one, we'll use y equals x squared minus x minus 6. And it looks like that went off the bottom. I can see the bottom of it, but you can't. So okay. And the definition of positive and negative is what the y coordinate is doing. So if the y coordinate is positive, then it's a positive. That's a place where the graph is positive or the function is positive. So the y coordinate there is 6.4236, still positive. If I come down here, now the y coordinate is negative. It's negative 1.4976. And so we see over here it is negative and up here it is positive. So if you want to highlight where it's positive, now this is where it gets like a little bit dicey, because you could say something like this: it's positive where y is greater than 0, which is like, yes, that's true. But what it did was it highlighted pretty much everything. So it highlighted where the function was positive, but like right in here, the function is actually negative. And if I look up, I still see like green highlighting there, okay? And what we'd like to do is cut off the highlighting when the function stops being positive. And the way we do that is by setting up an interval. So if you look over on the left-hand side there, I'm going to open up a bracket. That's the squiggly bracket. You can find that probably to the right of your P key on your keyboard. You have to do shift and then get that symbol. And in that interval, I'm going to write where the function is actually positive. Now, again, if you recall, we do this with respect to the x coordinates. So right here is where the graph is crossing over from being positive to negative. Again, we have that sense of moving from left to right. So we increase those x values. But when it gets to x equals -2, that's when it crosses over. So over here, I'm going to type in x is less than -2. And what I want you to notice happens there is it cuts the highlighting off right there when the graph crosses over into the negative. Now, what you'll also notice is that we eliminated the highlighting from over here, and over here the graph is also positive. So what I can do there is I can hit comma. Okay, and I can type in the other interval. I need to go see where that is. That begins at 3. That's my other crossover point. And I can type in x is greater than 3. And what that does is we now have the positive intervals highlighted, and we've eliminated this middle part where the graph is actually dipping below the x-axis, because it's not positive here. If I look at my y coordinates, it's not positive in there. And so you can see that we have the graph or the highlighting cutting off. Now, to get where it's negative, remember that means y would be less than 0. And so we've got that highlighted in purple, but we kind of have that same issue where it is highlighting everything in purple, including some of the regions where the graph is actually positive. And we would like to make sure that only in between the -2 and the 3 is what's highlighted. So we'll do that the same way. I'm going to come over here and open up that bracket. And this one I can do as a compound inequality, meaning I can get the whole thing in at once. And I can say -2 is less than x is less than 3. And what that does is it cuts this off so that we're only looking at x's in between the -2 and the 3. And so what we've done there is we have highlighted the positive intervals and in green and the negative interval, in this case, in purple. And over here, what you can see is your actual answer in inequality form. So if you're looking at a multiple choice test, or maybe it's I don't know, any kind of homework assignment, whatever, you can look over here, and if you're asked, well, what is the negative interval? You can write it as -2 is less than x is less than 3, and you can be pretty confident, yep, that is the section that I've highlighted. So this is a great way for you to confirm whether or not you have the right intervals, and it'll give you at least the inequality notation for writing those, and then you can transfer it over to another notation if you need to. So I hope this helps, and for those of you that are coming over from the other video, you can go and click back over to the video at this time.